Imagine living on a piece of land that belongs to your country, but is completely surrounded by another. For generations, this was the reality along parts of the India-Bangladesh border. At its most complicated, the region contained 162 historic enclaves, fragments of territory separated from the country they legally belonged to. Some were surrounded by the other country, creating a geographic puzzle that became almost impossible to administer. For the people living inside these territories, a line on a map could determine access to roads, government services, police, schools, and basic infrastructure. This was not a fictional border from a political thriller. It was a real territorial system that survived for centuries in one of the most densely populated regions of South Asia. And at the center of this story was an extraordinary question. How did India and Bangladesh inherit one of the world's most complicated borders? And why did it take decades to finally solve it?
The origins go back centuries, long before India or Bangladesh existed as modern nations. The territories around Cooch Behar developed through a complicated history of local kingdoms, shifting political control, and fragmented land ownership. Over time, pockets of territory belonging to one ruler became surrounded by territory controlled by another. What began as a political and administrative arrangement became far more complicated when modern international borders were eventually imposed on the region. Then came 1947. The British Partition transformed the political map of South Asia, creating new international boundaries between India and Pakistan. The eastern portion of Pakistan would eventually become Bangladesh. But the old territorial fragments around Cooch Behar did not simply disappear. Suddenly, properties that had once been local political curiosities were transformed into international enclaves, pieces of one country surrounded by another.
This is where the geography becomes almost impossible to visualize. An enclave is a piece of territory belonging to one country that is completely surrounded by another. But the India-Bangladesh border once went even further. There were counter-enclaves, territory belonging to one country located inside an enclave belonging to the other. And then there was an even more extraordinary case. Dahala Khagrabari became famous as the world's only known Third-Order Enclave. It was an Indian piece of land inside a Bangladesh enclave, which itself was inside an Indian enclave surrounded by Bangladesh. On a map, it looked almost absurd. On the ground, however, these arrangements created very real problems. Residents could face limited access to government services, infrastructure, transportation, and formal administration. The deeper the geography became, the harder it was for ordinary people to navigate the difference between a line on a map and the country that actually governed their daily lives.
Solving the problem required something much more difficult than redrawing a line. India and Bangladesh had to negotiate a territorial settlement. The Land Boundary Agreement was signed in 1974, but implementation took decades. The political challenge was simple to understand. Changing the border meant changing sovereignty. Land that had been administered as part of one country would become part of the other. In 2015, the two governments finally implemented the agreement and exchanged the historic enclaves. The process transferred 111 Indian enclaves in Bangladesh and 51 Bangladeshi enclaves in India. At midnight between July 31 and August 1, 2015, the centuries-old enclave system was formally brought to an end. For the people living inside those territories, the change was not simply cartographic. It meant finally receiving a clear national status and a defined relationship with the state around them.
But solving the enclave system
did not erase every unusual feature of the border. One of the most famous examples that remains is Dahagram-Angarpota, a Bangladeshi enclave connected to the rest of Bangladesh through the Tin Bigha Corridor. This one was different. Bangladesh kept it by design, part of the original 1974 deal. The corridor is a narrow passage through Indian territory, linking the enclave to mainland Bangladesh. Borders are not just lines on a map. They shape how people move and how governments exercise sovereignty. The enclave puzzle is gone, but the border it left behind is not at rest. Fencing disputes and mass deportations have strained it over the past year alone. Political decisions can survive for centuries after the people who made them are gone, and some are still being written today. It took 41 years to dissolve 162 enclaves. How long before what is still unresolved on that same line gets settled too? Global power is constantly shifting. Stay informed, stay curious, and we'll see you in the next analysis.